First thing that we're gonna do, I'm gonna avoid this sharp edge here, but this is a way. You can also form this by hand because it's so big. I already annealed. Sorry, that happened a second ago. Gotta anneal that first. So you can form it by hand, and then I'm just gonna hammer it down there. Okay, this is just a great way to get it started. So I would just form by hand so that you don't dent it. But it makes sense to just do it by hand. Also, you're going to forget that that's a thing. So you need to just do as much by hand as you can, because the hammer, we know that we could throw it off really quickly if we hammer the whole thing. So I just made it a little bit flatter, a little bit harder. And then I'm just doing the same thing I did with that small ring. This part's easy. Okay, let's go solder. Okay. All right. We can try this a couple of different ways. You can solder it like this and feed solder down. We can try it like this. We've done that a lot. I don't usually show you feed soldering. Do you want to see that? Because we know the main option would be put it pallions all the way down. When you put your pallions down, do like the size of the pallion and then the negative space of that pallion, size of the pallion, negative space. Does that make sense? So it's like stitches. That's how many you need. Everybody always asks, how many do you need? You need those really small ones and then just a negative space in between. Feed soldering, is that what you want to do? Okay. This is bonus material. We don't usually start this early, but I do think this is like a really cool time to try it. So I'm flexing both sides of my joint. Remember, we had annealed it before, so everything is perfectly clean, and we barely formed it, so it's not gonna have any tension that's gonna pull it back out. I'm using a number 2 torch tip. You could probably get away with a 1, and right now we just want the soft brick. So if there's other things over here, you need to move those yourself. Okay. So we want the soft brick on our pan here, and then I always get anything plastic, get it out of the way, get your setup nice and cleaned up here. So again, if we were doing this with pallions, you would just put it probably the other way with gravity and put the pallions on. So what I'm going to do, because I don't have any solder, can I have a nut chair? Just so that you guys can get a little bit closer, because this is kind of hard to see. And Ashton, if you need to zoom, I don't know if you need to zoom that in or if it's okay. You can't zoom too much or the quality's not great. So I'm just heating. And then remember that this is a rotary. And I'm always touching down here just with the thought that maybe I accidentally got it too hot before or somebody else did. Okay, so now you see how clean and beautiful it is. It's past annealing and it's ready to solder. I'm going to come up here with my feed solder. And I'm away from it right now. And that's it. I made a little mess, but not bad. And you see how it just went all the way down. It's perfect. So the little bit of mess is annoying enough for me that I'm really careful when I use feed soldering, but you can see how easy that is. The reason why I liked it for this particular joint is because I could lay it right on that edge. So the only reason why I messed it a little bit was because I just trimmed just a hair. So if that's the case, make sure that you're not heating up this part of the brick, because I do leave my hand on that brick so that I can touch it. And then I'm heating like this because of what? Why am I heating down here as opposed to just heating straight at the stick? Because of capillary action, right? So we've got heat is going to have to be away from it. I had to get the whole thing the same temperature. Heat's away from where you want to get it to draw it down. And then we use gravity to draw it down. So it's a super pretty joint. secret. So, so we're just going to hit consistently here, and then you're going to see that the geometry of it is going to tighten up as I go. And I'll go ahead and get that monster. Sorry, let's sneak. I love that you're writing notes though. Oh, that makes me feel so good. Okay, so I'm switching to this bigger one so that it just has more surface area. And I did check my joint to make sure that it was soldered well, and it looks really good. And so can you tell that I'm overlapping blows? And then you'll be here for a little bit. So you can see the areas that are still wonky, and you can see the areas that are starting to get circular. Okay, so that's the basics of basically all metal working. So you're just going to find that geometry, and I'm just finding a little bit more of a arc up here. Now I am kind of pulling down on the circle a little bit, and I'm concentrating right on the top edge right now because it's so close to circle. I know that I've been hitting this whole shape, and so I am kind of concentrating all blows straight on that outside edge now that I have it round. So, guys, you see the cotter pins down there?
Yes.
If this doesn't make your heart feel so good, you could just say, "Thank you, Fred." Do you see what's happening? It's hovering right above the brick. So the brick is going to be wicked hot. The cotter pins are just right above it. It's just making the perfect possible temperature. So does that make sense?
Instead of using...
Yeah, so if we use the tripod, what's the problem?
You lose a lot of heat.
We lose almost all the heat because it's just that steel is a heat sink. We've got nothing to hold it in. So this brick is making it crazy hot. Cotter pins are just right above it, so I can still get underneath a little bit and I can reflect heat underneath. That's the thing. That's the whole trick. Okay? You can also build these out of, I don't know if you guys have ever ordered large stuff, but they put metal straps around big things. You can also build them out of metal straps, depending on how tall they are, but most of the time those are like a mild steel. And so they're like maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch tall. And so then you just make little L shapes, you know, and put them underneath. But that's a little bit higher, you know, like 1/2 inch is pretty high. So this is ideal. Okay, so we're set up. I've got all my pallions. You can see I've got negative space of pallions on each side. I'm going to go ahead and use 2 torches because that's what I would normally do anyway. And I've got a number 2 torch. So if I'm going to use 2 torches, I don't have a third hand, but I am going to use this hand at some point as well. So if you're not going to do this by yourself with 2 torches, it is a really great idea to have a friend do the other torch, and then you need to just tell them the commands before you start. So you need to say, I'll ask you to go away or towards the wall or towards you, you know, you need to give them some direction of where you want them. Okay, so if I'm gonna light, you can see that I have it in my right hand here. I barely turn back, and I light just next to it. I don't want to go in like this, and I don't want to get right on top of it. So you can see it lights really easily, and I can do my weight like that. Okay, and then sorry, I'm gonna have to get over the top. I am gonna preheat. And so you technically don't need the 2 torches for the preheating part. And then I am going to go ahead and get after it. So I like to get my heat to the inside, so that's going to radiate the heat all the way out. If I have any work that I need to do with the pallions, only really one, and you saw how I turned that off. So now I'm gonna get after it. You can see that the material is changing color. I'm already past the yield. It's beautiful, it's nice and hot. I'm gonna keep this one down to the right side. So if you follow my right hand, I'm gonna keep this one at the right angle. Do you see it? This should be the second most beautiful thing you've seen all day. Check this out. Oh my God. I'm so good at this. Just kidding. Look at that. Oh my God. It's so nice. Look at this. Ah, we got it all the way. This is the next step. Not a big deal, but it's, you just might want to see me do it for a second, and then you can just start working. So I'm just cutting out the bottom. So mainly it's actually a little bit easier to hold on to. I have Burr Life right here. I didn't realize that most of the time you guys can't see that. So obviously, use your Burr Life. I just have it connected to my desk, so it makes it a little bit easier. I don't remember who told me that.
Me.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, I think I forgot to tell you that that's like my tricky little spot there. Yeah, you need Burr Life anytime that you're cutting. So this is actually a little bit easier to hold down because there's so much more surface area to hold on to. If you're right-handed, you're going to come in from the right side and work your way around. Left-handed, you're going to go in from the left, work your way around. But you really want to be able to see what you're doing. So I kind of am tipping my head right in there, and then I'm just watching for that joint. So there's nothing new to this other than if you tip your saw blade too much, you could bite into your actual box. So you just want to make sure, you could draw a line if you need to see it, but I'm just basically going right to the outside edge of that box. And you can hear some different things happening. This is kind of the sound that things are going well. Sometimes you're hitting like a little knot in the metal, and then sometimes it's time to do Burr Life again. But you can see how I've just kind of got my body tipped just a little bit so I can see. So I'm just looking straight down at that joint and making sure that I'm not biting into my box. So I mean, like if I angle really far this way, I'm biting into the lower edge of the box, or if I go this way, obviously I'm going to hit the side of my wall there. So, but honestly, even though it's a little bit awkward working around that tall wall, this actually is pretty easy to hold on to compared to you guys have been doing the tiny stuff holding on to it. This is actually a little bit easier. If I need more Burr Life, I'm just going to strap the bottom of my blade and it'll work its way up. And I am not going to file this right away. For the same reason on our overlay ring, I want to make sure that I leave a little bit of edge so that it doesn't melt on the next joint. Making big boxes. Are you guys down for this size, or do you want it small? Yeah, it'll be easier. It'll teach you a lot more on the forming. It'll be harder to solder, but you'll learn how to use more heat. But it's a lot better for actually learning how the forming's working. So that's a great start. I think the payoff for the textured material is so good once you start soldering it together. So I mentioned before I like using contrasting metal for these because it basically kind of deletes that solder joint. The joint is always going to be silver in color unless you use a silver solder that has like a copper or brass coloring to it. It's just a little bit harder to work with because it has that different alloy in there. But when you contrast the metals, it basically just makes it completely invisible. You can do the whole thing in copper, the whole thing in brass if you want to, but that's the only reason why I like the contrasting.